Hello, and welcome to episode 66 of Uncovering the Corners of the World podcast. I'm your host, Karina Kasmala. This week, I talked with Cassidy Stephenson, a video game writer specializing in Pokemon, the Japanese video game franchise. She is also a film enthusiast who is well-versed in various types of films and TV shows, from supernatural mystery shows to romances to international Korean dramas and everything in between. On her most recent adventure, she traveled to Georgia to see some of the most recognizable landmarks from popular TV shows. Let's start there. How was your trip?
Yeah, so one day I was like, oh, well, my mom's spring break is coming up. My mom's a teacher, so, the only time she can really travel is during, school breaks. So one day, it was, a Monday, over the start of spring break, my mom was kind of like, oh, we've been wanting to go to Mystic Falls, which is outside of Atlanta. And we went there it was just a day trip because it's 5 hours away. It's about 5 hours from where I live in Tennessee. And so we went in the early morning, we left, and Mystic Falls was the first place we visited. Its official name is Covington, Georgia, but a lot of people recognize it as Mystic Falls. They even have signs that say "Welcome to Mystic Falls" from the highway, and they have signs in the town where it says "Welcome to Mystic Falls." So we get there and we go up to the main square, which Mystic Falls is the setting of the CW's The Vampire Diaries. And The Vampire Diaries is about this girl, typical vampire love story that, Team Damon or Team Stefan is basically the premise of the show. I think it ended in 2017. Probably ran for a good, maybe 8 seasons, I think. Mm-hmm. And that was basically my middle school experience. The height of Vampire Diaries' popularity was when I was in middle school.
Okay.
And so we went to Covington, Georgia, because I had wanted to visit there for a while. And we go to the square, which is a really nice, old-looking town. Even if you didn't want to go there for, Vampire Diaries stuff, there was still very, I'm trying to think of the word, it was very rustic. I don't know if rustic's the right word, but we went to the main square, which they have a huge clock tower, which is in the Vampire Diaries, and the Mystic Grill is where everybody ate in the Vampire Diaries. We didn't get a chance to eat there because we didn't have enough time, but we saw the outside of it, and there really wasn't a lot. I mean, it was a Monday. There wasn't a lot of tourists. There was these 2 other girls drinking out of blood bags that are actually filled with fruit punch. And they have a gift shop that has basically every some clothes that the Vampire Diaries cast for. And they had a bunch of souvenirs, candles and t-shirts and Vampire Diaries, vampire themed stuff, like blood bags. So we were following the girls with the blood bags, and we ended up at all of the houses that they lived at in the show. And we were before we saw the girls, we were wait, is this house? Because a lot of them don't have signs. Because it's oh crap, is this house in the Vampire Diaries? It looks like it, so we're just going to take a picture. Mm-hmm. And we just continue on going. And then we noticed that, some of them are marked. And we noticed that one of the houses, you couldn't even take a picture next to one of the houses because they charge a $10 fee for you to step on their porch. So we're just continuing along, and we saw the Lockwood Mansion, which is Corinne, have you ever seen The Vampire Diaries? If I go on a rant.
I've seen a episode, so I know that I know the backstory of it. I think it might have been also popular when I was in middle school, and the spin-offs with it.
Yeah, there's a couple spin-offs, but we didn't see that really locations of those. But we saw the Lockwood Mansion, which is a huge house at the end of this long driveway,
Mm-hmm.
and it has security cameras and all of that. And we kept on walking, and we saw the oldest house in Covington. I can't remember when it was constructed, but it was in like the 1800s. And this one lady, like with her dog in her yard, and this, typical like Southern heiress, really. And we're like, oh, is this the house inspired by Gone with the Wind? And which actually the house that inspired Gone with the Wind is in Covington somewhere. We didn't get to it because couldn't find it. But she goes on this. The thing with Southern people is they don't know when to stop talking. It's like you can start walking and I've noticed this in Midwestern people too. Like you start walking okay, no, I'm done with this conversation, but they continue. And so she goes up with this very detailed backstory of these people's names that we've never heard of. We're not from here, and she's like, oh well, Confederate Generals lived on the street, one in that house, one in that house, and one in that house.
Wow.
And we're like, oh, and they're like, oh, that house was used for a hospital for Confederate soldiers. And it's the same houses. They ordered the people not to destroy the houses in Covington because they were so beautiful or something like that. And so all the houses are the same condition that they were in the Civil War, at least on the outside. But I thought that was pretty wild. So we finally got away from her. She was really nice. She had a cute dog. So then we go in the car, and we have a list of Stranger Things locations that we want to see. That's kind of our thing on family vacations, is that we go to a lot of film locations. For my high school trip, we went to Los Angeles, and we saw the house for the Brady Bunch and the house for American Horror Story, the first season. And we saw, what else did we see? We saw, when we went, one holiday in Chicago, we were like, oh, we're going to see a bunch of locations.
Yeah.
And we went to the Breakfast Club football field, the school. We went to the 16 Candles Church, went to Ferris Bueller's house, and we went to 16 Candles' house, and I think that was about a Home Alone house, too. So it's kind of our thing to really go to film locations. So after Mystic Falls, we traveled to, all the Stranger Things locations are kind of in different small towns outside of Atlanta, which in the South, Atlanta is actually called the Hollywood of the South, because a lot of films and TV shows actually film outside of Atlanta. There's this couple signs. Sweet Home Alabama was filmed there. My cousin Vinny was actually filmed there with Ralph Macchio. I think, it's called My Cousin Vinny, I think. Something Cousin Vinny. And I'm trying to think of what else. Something else was filmed there. But, so we went to Stranger Things. The Walking Dead is actually filmed outside of Atlanta, too.
Yeah.
But a lot of those locations are closed down, or we're on a set, or you just can't enter. And we went to the Stranger Things school, I think, first, which is Hawkins Middle School and Hawkins High School. And there was nobody there, so we kind of just, wandered about and took pictures. And it was kind of cool because, this school, which isn't an actual school now, so it has, a lot of writing on it, and it's kind of just Eddie Munson and 11, and has a bunch of slogans from the show, and people will put people had a little shrine in front of this one door of stuff from the 80s of scrunchies and stuff. And it was pretty cool, and we wanted to go to the mall that is. Are you familiar with Stranger Things, Karina?
I am, but if you want to give like a quick summary to everyone who probably doesn't know, quick overview would be helpful.
Stranger Things is set like in the 1980s in Indiana, but it's not filmed in Indiana. It's filmed in Atlanta, and it's about this like group of young people, like middle schoolers, and then they turn into high schoolers, and they're actually like 25, but they're still high schoolers according to Hollywood. And so they follow them, and one day this mysterious force, supernatural entity, kidnaps their one friend with a bad haircut. And they need to rescue him, but then more people get kidnapped and killed by other supernatural things. Like the most recent season was Vecna, and it was really gruesome. And so yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's a good show. It's good for people who like kind of like mysteries and drama and 1980s themed stuff. It's good nostalgia. They have like when they dressed up as the Ghostbusters. That was pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw that one.
That was like, oh, okay. And they go to like arcade, I think, yeah. And like when they're in the mall, which we wanted to go to. Mm-hmm. But it turns out the mall is closed down. There was like a murder there.
Oh my God.
At like a Subway or something. And like it kind of just like shut down months later, so we just didn't drive to it because it's like, whatever, I wanted to see like the inside of it mostly, which supposedly still kept like the stores from like the show, but it doesn't exist anymore. And then after that, we went to their houses, which is like in a little kind of neighborhood with a lot of trees. And they have like signs in front of every house, like, private property, do not enter.
Yeah.
And so we kind of knew which houses were which because of the signs. So we took pictures of Mike Wheeler's house, and we saw, oh my gosh, what's his name? Oh my gosh, Lucas. I don't know why I blanked. I was like Caleb, but that's the actor's name. And we saw Dustin's house. Mm-hmm. And then I think we saw Barb's house too. So that was pretty cool. And after that, we kind of decided that my brother really is a Stranger Things fan too. And so my brother's like, oh, I want to see the laboratory. So the laboratory is in Atlanta, and it's a part of like a university. So we couldn't really like go in the parking lot because they have these like video cameras, and you have to press a button. And we just like saw it from the outside and took a picture. And so I think that was all the locations we saw.
I'd like to thank Cassidy for joining me on this week's episode, along with the listeners who tuned in to listen to this week's episode. This is the first part of our Hollywood of the South tour. In part 2, we will continue talking about Georgia. In the meantime, be sure to check out Cassidy's recent video game articles at www.dexerto.com. Have a great week.